She wore blue velvet. What is up, everybody? Welcome to PCP Movie Night. Welcome, in fact, tonight in particular, where we're talking about our very first David Lynch film here on PCP, the year PCPX. If you're not down with PCPX, I got two words for you. David Lynch, R.I.P. We lost this incredible filmmaker just a few weeks ago. And tonight, this was already set up, but it's very appropriate that we're talking about Blue Velvet from David Lynch, 1986, the movie that was his rebound from Dune and the setup, in my opinion, for Twin Peaks. Super excited to talk about this movie, super excited to talk about this filmmaker, and even more super excited to talk about this movie with first-timers and a fellow expert. Speaking of first-timers, it's Brooks. What is up, my man? First-time watch.
Yeah, what's up? Fuck Heineken. Pabst Blue Ribbon.
That's right. How many times we heard that in our lives?
That's my favorite line from this movie. Like, this is the one I'm like, yeah, that's it. But yeah, this is actually the only David Lynch movie I've seen is Dune. And like, I know of David Lynch is like, he's supposed to be more of like an artsy kind of filmmaker. And like Dune, I could tell like, that's not his best. I still thought Dune was a pretty decent movie though. It's interesting in ways. But yeah, this is what I expected David Lynch's work to be like. When I watch it's like, yes, I see. This is the David Lynch I've heard so much about. Because I've never watched Twin Peaks either. So like, I just know of David Lynch.
When you finally watch Twin Peaks, you're going to be like, oh, of course. Of course, this is the same guy that did Blue Velvet. Of course. 100%. We also got another first-timer. It's Verno from Blood Splatter Chatter. And this is, dude, you know that I have the PCP Movie Night theme, but I also got the PCP Movie Night horror theme. I was tempted to use that because I know this is not a horror movie, but this is as much of a horror movie as some of the other movies that you and Dylan have covered that aren't necessarily horror, but I think this is horror adjacent, man. Something totally appropriate for you to cover, I believe.
I would totally cover this. It's like terrifying. Even in like the scenes that have nothing slightly terrifying going on, it's super, super unsettling. Just like what Brooks said, I minus the Dune part. I hadn't seen anything. I haven't seen Dune. I haven't seen Twin Peaks. I've seen nothing. So this is the first experience, which is why I picked it. I saw it was on the list, and I've wanted to check out David Lynch. So I'm glad I did. Glad I'm here with you fine gentlemen to discuss it.
Yeah, what a great first David Lynch film to talk about, too, is Blue Velvet. But we got a veteran here, a Blue Velvet veteran. It's Joe Corallo. I bet you recently watched this on the big screen.
I saw this on the big screen on Saturday.
Yes, of course.
But no, it worked out because I was like, oh, we're doing the thing. There was a screening Saturday. I'm like, perfect. That's how I'm going to rewatch it on the big screen. It's funny because this is a panel that's made up of two people who aren't as well versed. That's not a judgment or anything. It's just like like there's plenty of stuff I haven't seen, and two people who like I'm going to say, Robbie, you are also decades into your interest in David Lynch.
Yes,
I'm assuming.
I would say
yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So I also have been into David Lynch since the 20th century. So I watched Eraserhead as a kid with my dad. He showed me that, and Freaks, like basically back to back. And then I mean I've seen a lot. I in the last year I showed my friend Chase Rabbits. I had shown him Blue Velvet a year or so ago. After David Lynch passed, which was tragic. Like I say, out of nowhere, like it wasn't shocking. His health had been an issue for a little while, but it just sort of came out of the blue. And for the 3 nights after his death, I watched Wild at Heart, The Elephant Man, and Lost Highway.
Oh, nice.
And and then rewatching this is only the second David Lynch movie I've seen on the big screen. The first of which I went to a midnight screening of Fire Walk with Me years ago, and like that's a whole other thing. Like that's a movie that was always fucking great, and everyone was too fucking stupid to appreciate this incredible movie they got because it wasn't a direct sequel to the end of the second season of Twin Peaks. People were assholes about it, but it turns out like if that's what you wanted, you never understood Twin Peaks.
Word.
And you probably don't understand David Lynch either. David Lynch he's such an incredible director, writer, but like he's also very like direct. These movies are not nearly as like impenetrable. Like people act like, oh, I don't understand it and all this stuff. You watch interviews with him, he's basically like bewildered at people being like, what are you fucking like talking about? Like this is like a very simple concept that he's done as a movie with surrealist elements. Like Eraserhead, for example, is it's just about a guy with anxieties about being married and settling down with one woman and having to raise a kid and what that is. And that's all that movie's about. I'm not trying to diminish the movie. It's an incredible movie, but like you can pierce through that pretty simply and see that's what that movie's about. Lost Highway is just David Lynch's obsession with the O.J. Simpson trial and him trying to figure out a way like, okay, O.J. is really claiming he didn't do it. How would that work? How would a murder happen that someone did it, but they've convinced themselves they haven't done it like to that point? And once you pierce through that, it's like, yeah, Lost Highway is not that fucking hard to understand. With Blue Velvet, it's very simply, hey, for like decades, how there have been like movies and books and comics and all sorts of media about some fucking nosy high schooler who's just like, golly gee whiz, there's something strange going on in the town. I'm going to investigate. It's a very simple story you've seen a million times, but David Lynch goes like, what if that fucker really found out what it was like to actually investigate something?
A real
insidious. Yeah.
A real life
Dennis Hopper in real life.
A real life Scooby-Doo, right?
Yeah.
Here's the thing,
so,
Joe. Since David Lynch is just telling simple stories in complex ways, what's Inland Empire about?
That's another episode. We can talk about that one later. But,
well, that's a different film, Robbie.
Yeah, no. I mean, you have to understand that was Lynch was moving from film to digital. I mean, there's really a lot that we can. But
all right,
yeah.
Let's break this open. Blue Velvet. I got this nice Criterion edition on Blu-ray right there. So this PCP movie night is brought to you from Jamie and Clayton, two of my favorite people that will always be in my heart. Love you, Jamie. Love you, Clayton. Thank you so much for the movie. That's why we're talking about it. And it's the first David Lynch film we're talking about for a good reason. I think it's the best David Lynch film, in my personal opinion. I love David Lynch films. As hard as they are for a lot of people to understand, Mulholland Drive, Inland Empire, those are not easy movies for the common man to like figure out. You know what I'm saying? Like you got to study some of his films. My introduction into David Lynch as a name was Twin Peaks. Mm-hmm. I grew up, my mom, my dad, they loved watching Twin Peaks. I would watch it with them. I loved it. I didn't understand it when I was like 11 years old, but for some reason I was embraced and entranced and enthralled by Twin Peaks, right? Mm-hmm. And then I find out later on in my life when I buy the Twin Peaks DVD set that David Lynch is the guy behind it. And then I realized I had already seen Elephant Man. That was a movie I'm pretty sure I watched that in like middle school or something, right? But that was I had no idea that was a David Lynch film. But the first film I watched, knowing it was David Lynch, post my enjoyment of Twin Peaks and post my purchase of the DVD box set of season 1 of Twin Peaks, was Blue Velvet. And I watched this movie for the first time in the early 2000s, maybe the late 90s, but I'm pretty sure it was the early 2000s, whenever that DVD box set came out. Because people were like, yo, Robbie, you love Twin Peaks. You really need to check out Blue Velvet. And so I watch it and I'm like, well, this is the prototype Twin Peaks right here. It's about, like you said, teenagers trying to understand something that they cannot fathom yet, right?
Yeah.
It's about small town, suburban America, but the complexities of even the darkness of that. It's about light versus dark, very simply put.
Yeah.
This movie blows my fucking world apart, right? The music, whether it's like picked music from pop culture or whether it's Angelo's actual score, who eventually Angelo Badalamenti, who is no longer with us as well, he would score most of every single David Lynch film, including the TV series Twin Peaks. Now, that's one of my favorite shows of all time. It's surreal. It's cerebral. It's provocative. It's eccentric. It's incredibly interesting. It's off the cuff. It is subversion. It is transgression. It is playing with so many things. And what's so weird is that David Lynch is the most square fucking filmmaker you would ever think of, right? The guy that Dennis Hopper says couldn't even say, every time you say the word fuck, he would point at the script. Every time you say that word, do it this way. Like, and he's the golly gee guy. Like, he really is that guy. Like David Lynch really is this like homebred American fucking guy, but he's got these interesting thoughts. He knows how to tell them visually and audibly. The sound is so important to his work, and this movie in particular. I love this movie. Kyle MacLachlan, amazing. Dennis Hopper, amazing. Isabella Rossellini, absolutely amazing. Everybody in this cast is amazing. The tone, the atmosphere that's brought up with the visuals, with the music, with the performances, the characters, the story, the way it all comes down together. I'm watching this movie like last week and I'm like, man, this is like Daniel Clowes. And then I remembered that when Daniel Clowes did Like a Velvet Glove Cast in Iron, that was called David Lynchian. You know what I'm saying? So
yeah,
it's so weird, so surreal, such a cool mystery that I absolutely love. The original script for this movie, or the original edit of this movie, was like 4 hours long. There's a big story behind this. He wrote this film. He had just done Dune with Dino De what's his name? Help me out. Dino De Laurentiis. What's his fucking name?
De Laurentiis.
I think it's De Laurentiis.
Yeah, that guy. And he's like, okay, I can do this movie. I promise you it will work. And he had to make a deal where he would get final cut as long as he like took less money, so the budget went down. This movie's made for like $6 million, y'all. You can't, A24 couldn't make this movie for less than $64 million today. You know what I'm saying? This movie is so fucking good. It's incredible. And this, as weird as it may be, I would say out of his films, this might be the most accessible David Lynch film.
Fuck. I'm in trouble.
So, Brooks, first time watching. What do you think? You out there in the chat, we see you. What do you think? Join the conversation. Brooks, what you got?
Well, yeah, I really like this movie, and like, it's like nothing in this movie is on the surface. Everything is like, it's like veiled almost, like, you know. And like the thing, like I was thinking, like, man, what is it that makes this movie so unsettling for me? And like, what the conclusion I came to was that I don't know any of the characters' motivations in this movie. It's like I don't know like what any of these characters really want. It seems like they kind of have like they're kind of like archetypes that just perform in different ways, and like a lot of their reactions are confusing sometimes because it doesn't get into like their real motivations. I don't think like especially like Laura Dern's character, like she's so confusing to me because like there's the part where she learns that I guess he was with the other lady, the nightclub singer, and she makes this expression, this like over the top like grimace of disgust. And I'm like, that had to be intentional. Like he's fucking with us.
Yeah.
So yeah, like it lends a very uneasy kind of feeling to this movie, but it's very interesting. It's a very interesting movie. Like I do like there's like you can tell there's more to this like underneath the surface than like what you're seeing for the first time. This is a movie I feel like would be like another one that would you probably learn to appreciate more the more you watch it. You'd like pick up more things in it. But yeah, like great movie. Not too
Yeah,
bad.
the more you watch this, Brooks, I guarantee you, the more you're gonna love it. I guarantee you that. I also would guarantee you, hopefully, that Verno watched this movie at least twice, because that's usually his MO.
Should have. I should have. Last week you said, Verno, you better watch this one twice, and I was like, oh, I'll make sure that I do. Unfortunately, I've been really into this fucking NBA video game recently at the Super Bowl, and I didn't. I watched it once, but
this movie's way better than last night's Super Bowl, man.
I had money on the Eagles, so I don't know.
Good for you.
I was entertained.
You didn't have to watch it to make that money, though.
True. But I had people over. It was fun. But I enjoyed the shit out of it. But it's a frustrating movie. Despite everything Joe said, I disagree with all that. It fucking went over my head completely. A lot of elements of it, especially when I look into interpretations of it. It's like, oh, I didn't get a lot of that shit. We haven't mentioned a lot of like Robbie, you did like the shadow and like looked at it that way. After watching people that really fucking understood the movie, I realized how much I didn't understand the movie. The plot, I'm getting it as I'm going down, and some of the more obvious themes I definitely got, but dude, I don't know what it was. It was partially like the movie, maybe it was the strain that I was working on at the time. But I know like from what his reputation, his movies will make you very uncomfortable, even though very few of them are like you could label as horror, just like this one. But like I said in the opening, like there's something about like not the pacing of the movie, but the pacing of individual scenes and just lingering on a scene for a second or two longer, or like a pause in between dialogue. That's just like there's something about the rhythm of it that is like so freaking awkward and unsettling. But it's just, and then obviously we'll get into the style, but it's just beautiful, just like stunningly beautiful right from the get-go with the white picket fence and the flowers and the bold colors. And it's just like I get just like what one of you was mentioning earlier. Like, yeah, I see what everyone's talking about when they're talking about David Lynch, but it's also like it's kind of reminds me of Cronenberg, where it's cold and detached. You know what I mean? Like I don't like connect to the characters. I love what you said, Brooks. Like you're spot on. Like you don't know what anybody wants. That's a super good point. It's like, yeah, like what the hell does anybody want in this? Other than Dennis Hopper, it's a little bit more clear stuff with his mom. I really wish I would have watched it twice. I definitely enjoyed it, but I clearly need to see this thing again. Like I definitely should have seen it again.
Well,
but it's cool. I'm really glad I watched it.
I've never heard a better argument for you doing this on your channel.
Yeah.
And I'll be there when you tell me. I'll be there for that day. This happened multiple times in our friendship. I'll be there for that day where you go, first time I watched this over at Robbie's channel, thought it was all right. But now that I'm reviewing it for my channel, I think it's fucking great. One of the greatest films of all time. I completely understand their motivations. Because I had time to think about it.
It's just like it's similar to what I said about Mean Streets last week, where I appreciated and respected the filmmaking more than I really, really enjoyed the movie, but maybe even more so. Like I really was blown away by the style of this fucking movie. Like with Spielberg, or not Spielberg, I'm sorry, Scorsese, I was blown away by the influence and how modern it felt in 1973, and just like, damn, he already had it right then and there, and he like changed cinema. With this one, it's just like is just dripping with style like the whole time, and just emotion. Even when I don't understand why I'm feeling what I'm feeling. And it's not even like the really nasty scenes where they're getting into the sexual assault. That's not the disturbing stuff, although it is. It's like these unexplained moments when I don't know why I feel this way. Like that's what this movie does.
Fuck yeah. You've never watched Twin Peaks, have you, Blood?
No.
Ah, Jesus.
Yeah.
We're gonna have to do that very, very soon. Joe.
Yeah.
We've had some first timers talk. How about somebody who truly appreciates David Lynch? Tell us what you feel about Blue Velvet.
This is the movie that really cements David Lynch as David Lynch. Because if you look at the stuff he was doing prior to this, this is closer to Eraserhead than probably anything else he did up to then. This feels the most like this is something that like comes from something deeper within him. The Elephant Man was just, which is fantastic, and that's probably his most accessible film. But I get what you were saying, Robbie, because it's not really like it's like a studio film. It's
the most accessible Lynch film, right?
Yeah,
right.
But yeah, but like, so I definitely recommend that for anyone who's like interested, but is like, I want to like David Lynch, but I want to like watch a more like, does he do some stuff that's like just like a linear story about a character, and like, there you go. But yeah, you get that, you get Dune, then you get Blue Velvet. This was a scandalous movie at the time. It didn't do well initially. Obviously, it developed a huge cult following, but like, it wasn't a big success. Studios were upset at the idea of like, you just bombed with Kyle MacLachlan and you're putting Kyle MacLachlan in a movie again. Like, people thought he was insane for doing that.
And Dennis Hopper had been in rehab, right? He had like been blacklisted from the industry, and he brings him in to play a fucking drug addicted crazy person. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's this movie had everything against it, man.
Yeah, there was a whole bit too of like, what was it? Dennis Hopper like had that call with David Lynch where he said like, I am Frank Booth, like I gotta play this role. And then apparently Frank went back to Kyle MacLachlan, Isabella Rossellini, and Laura Dern, and was like, good news. Dennis Hopper said yes. He said he is Frank Booth. That's great. Maybe we don't have lunch with him.
Yeah, he was like, good news is he's the character, but bad news is I don't see how we can have lunch with this guy if he is Frank.
Like, just a whole great sort of bit. But yeah, people were like, this is before Twitter. I know it's hard to imagine, but people still would like hear things that happened and not understand them and create outrage. And there was outrage created in part by dumb fuck Roger Ebert, who was like outrage on her behalf. It wasn't okay that they had her in positions like that, or that she had to play naked, and like she wasn't there in the days when they were filming, like during the day, so she didn't know what it was like on set when it wasn't scenes like that. And he like was genuinely outraged, and like she has done so many interviews where she was like, what are you people talking about? Like, that wasn't my experience at all. I had a great time. I'm proud of that role. And David Lynch was at one point the love of my life. So like, what are you fucking talking about?
And major props to Gene Siskel for combating Roger Ebert during that review, where he was like, I get what you're saying, but you're wrong. Like, I thought that we want filmmakers to take us on these journeys. We want filmmakers to provoke us. right? And I love it when Roger and Gene did not agree, especially on a film like this, right? Because Roger Ebert, let's be honest, he's white knighting is what he's doing, right? Like maybe he had a crush on Isabella, right? But he's all like, it's so bad that it's so wrong that they like film these scenes this way. There's no point to it. And Gene's like, no, there is a point to it. Every great filmmaker that we talk about is trying to make you feel something. And as soon as you feel something, Roger, you're like, no, I'm disgusted with my own self. And that's the whole point of this movie, right? That's what it is. The Kyle MacLachlan character, what's it, Jeffrey? Right? Like everybody always talks.
Yeah, Jeffrey.
Why is Kyle MacLachlan in so many David Lynch projects, right? Kyle MacLachlan is a stand-in for David Lynch. They look the same. He acts like David Lynch does. David Lynch is not kidding, y'all. He is that guy who's like, oh, wow. Oh, boy. Oh, Christ, forgive my words. Like he is such a square, normal guy. And one of the reasons why he is such a happy, square guy, because he understands the darkness within everybody. And Kyle represents that. And Gene understood that. And Roger did not, man. That, if you watch that Siskel and Ebert review of this movie, it's the best. I always try to watch the Siskel and Ebert stuff whenever we do a movie that they covered. Bruh, that was my favorite. That was my favorite bit, was them arguing about this movie, dude.
Oh yeah, no, it was great. And this was wasn't this Laura Dern's like first major role in a movie?
Yeah, she's like 18 years old when this movie's made. Yeah.
Yeah. Like this was the start of like Laura Dern's career. Like just so much going for this. And this is only after what, like a year or two after Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, which is one of the other best Dennis Hopper movies you'll ever watch.
I agree.
Yeah, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. I mean, we talked about it on the channel. Incredible movie. Like
he did this one, and so like his comeback tour was this one. Then immediately he did like Hoosiers. And what's the other one? At River's Edge? Is that what the movie's called? Something like that. He did 3 movies back to back, and he won the Oscar for Hoosiers, but he thought he would win it for this one, right? And David Lynch got nominated for this film too. So
I thought he'd win it for that Mario Brothers movie. It's just this close.
Dude, I'm telling you, man, that's an underappreciated fucking performance, man.
All I could think about every time he came on screen was him as King Koopa. Seriously.
I just wish he had the. If the Super Mario Brothers, he brings up a fucking gas mask. Mario.
which while we're on that subject, the original idea, which you guys have probably heard, is that it was going to be he was huffing helium, so that he was going to have a squeaky voice after every time he would huff. That would have been very interesting.
Yeah, it would
have been interesting, but like you were saying before, with David Lynch being such like just like an golly gee whiz kind of guy, is like I'm sure you saw that too. Like Dennis Hopper was like, oh, we could just say like it's like nitrous or something like this, and he was just like, oh, what do you do with that? Like
he's like, people take it to get themselves riled up sexually, David. And he's just like, oh gee, I just like burgers, cherry pie, and good coffee. All right. This movie has some amazing performances. I'm going to be nice because there's a lot of performances to highlight. So, Brooks, what's the performance you want to highlight first?
Well, the one that really kind of caught me that was, Dennis Hopper is a great villain in this movie, but like, his 2 henchmen, Brad Dourif was the one. Like, I was like,
hell yeah.
This is one of I love Brad Dourif. Like, he's done some great performances.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
He has like the most thankful job. He's always like a second fiddle or like something like that, except for Child's Play. And he's mostly like, doing voice work for that. But yeah, I loved how these 2 henchmen of Dennis Hopper's character, like they almost feel like extensions of him. Like I wouldn't be surprised if there was like some kind of like tentacle going from Dennis Hopper into these 2 guys, and they're like just extensions of his will. Like, it kind of feels like, that Dennis Hopper is like the main, like the monster is Dennis Hopper and these two guys. Dennis Hopper is like the main piece. He's like the head, and these two guys are just like kind of his limbs. And I loved, like, he does the laugh in his movie. I'm like, Chucky's in this movie.
Mm.
And then I was like, oh no, it's just Brad Dourif playing a different character. I was like, he kind of disappears, like both of them kind of do later in the movie, but like the little screen time they do get, I think it was really good. Like great henchman casting.
Yeah. Brad Dourif even had it in 1986, right?
Mhm.
What about you, Verna? What's
Before
the
the Green
character?
Worm Tongue.
It's true. Verna, what about you, man? What do you think about what's a performance you want to highlight?
I'll just add that Brad Dourif's hair was rocking. Brooks, you look like you could pull that off. Just let that one side go.
Yeah,
I
Brooks
guess
does have Brad Dourif hair.
You
He's
do.
always had Brad Dourif hair.
I'll go with Isabella Rossellini's character, Dorothy. Incredible. It's just like, like I said, I've only watched the thing one time. So where you think that character is going to go, it's just, so first of all, like the arc of her is so complicated and not what you would think. You know what I mean? It's this woman being abused. Just the way she's acting is so erratic and unpredictable and funny at times. Like that's another thing about the entire movie is there's all these funny like moments where I found myself laughing and then you kind of feel bad. What the fuck am I laughing about? That was awkward.
Sounds
But,
like a David Lynch film.
it was so good. Her performance was just top notch, and I was the vulnerability to go there, just to have like the sexual stuff happening to her, be open to it. And another little fun fact, that scene that you guys have probably heard, that scene where she's spreading her legs for Dennis Hopper, he didn't know that she was naked underneath there. So she opens up to him, and in mid scene is when he realizes what's going on, and he rolled with it. But that kind of tells you like where her head was at, like as a performer for this. But when she comes out on the street naked is also insane and like so uncomfortable. And they said that there was like people from the neighborhood that were there watching her in lawn chairs.
I think that's the
adding to the
scene that Roger
uncomfortableness.
Ebert was like super offended by too.
I could see it. I mean, I could see it from Roger Ebert, but she was incredible. She's a revelation to me. I don't know her. I don't know if she's been in a bunch of stuff and you guys are more familiar with her, but it was yeah, I was so blown away by her.
This is one of her first movies, and initially I think David Lynch wanted Helen Mirren to play the role.
Yeah.
And but then he kind of like went with her, and I think it works. I think it works so well. The vulnerability is a big part of it, man. Like, first of all, he asked her to gain weight. She's a model before this movie. She's a model. He asked her to gain weight and then be nude. Amazing. Right? And what's crazy is I was like, she gained weight for this movie? If I gained weight for a movie, I'm going to be 350 fucking pounds showing up with my dick and balls just spread open for Dennis Hopper. You know what I'm saying? So
she was in Death Becomes Her, which she's got to be the one that gives them the potion. That's her, I assume, right? It's got to be her.
Movie in forever. Is that her in that movie, Joe?
It's got to be her. There's a dark-haired girl with an accent that's beautiful and gives them the. I could be wrong.
It might be. I mean, the big thing she's in now, or was just in, was Conclave. Like, so.
She's in that movie. I haven't seen that yet. Was it good, Joe? Was Conclave good?
Church movie?
I haven't seen it yet, but like she has a role in that, so that's like
a big Oscar why she's movie. It's not going to win, but yeah, it's nominated for Best Picture, right? Yeah.
Oh, and the other thing, it is her singing, right? Like that's her singing.
Yeah.
It's also incredible. Can't mention her without saying that. It's like one of the highlights of the movie.
Absolutely. What about you, Joe? What's a performance you want to highlight?
There's so many. I want to highlight Laura Dern, but I also have to acknowledge that Jack Nance, is also just great. It's just Paul in this movie, and how he also shows up at the end, like with the dad, is also just like, all right. But what was it? There's a whole thing to it. I think I'll save for when we're talking about what this movie's really about, or all that. But Laura Dern. Again, like a first major role in a movie, this is the role, and she's able to do all of that with it. I love the bit she does with her face that Brooks mentioned, earlier, Like that's incredible. I'm like, I don't know how someone can even do that with their face. It's like, what an incredible sight. She just plays up the whole like she's really funny in it. In this like dark humorous sort of way, because so much of it is because that's what I get out of it. The dark humor of the like very mature, violent Scooby-Doo type situation where she's just very like, oh gosh, like I don't know if we should really break into that prostitute's apartment and you know try to see if she's in a drug deal, but like she whiz. I mean, I guess we'll try and let's just hope we don't get caught. Like all of that stuff, so fucking funny, and she just plays it so straight and does such an incredible job with it. It's just masterful all the way through the movie. Especially one of my favorite bits is the whole bit with Isabella being naked in the home and like the mom being disgusted, and she's, you know, it's like, oh, like it's the sitcom bit of like being caught on a like what seems like a date with someone else, and you know, being like, oh, I could explain, but as dark as possible, and how she's able to just like forgive him easily not long after that scene, which feels more real than what you would normally expect in a movie like that. It's like, yeah, we've been through a lot. And yeah, this girl's clearly been traumatized. So like, I'm not gonna fucking make that a big issue right now. Like, that was great. Like she plays this really down to earth, earnest person going through these things in a way where it's funny, but it's also very, I don't know, like it works. It works in so many different ways, like the tone, everything. She just nails it inside and out.
Yeah, she does. All right. Since y'all left it open, Dennis Hopper as Frank in this movie is like one of the best performances. I think it might be my favorite Dennis Hopper performance. I absolutely love this movie, man. He's so good as Frank. He's the one, like, was it Verno that mentioned that? Like, he's the one that somebody mentioned. It's either Verno or Joe that mentioned that David Lynch wrote it to just be like helium, but he was like, no, it should be this other thing, and I can get into it and do this. And dude, it's amazing. This is the first role Dennis Hopper took post rehab, and his agent, his manager, everybody at the agency, everybody was like, don't do this role. This is an unforgivable type character. You need to start building some shit up. He did not do that. And he had a career resurgence with this shit, right? He really did. But
yeah,
I got to give a major shout out to Dean Stockwell, who most people remember from Quantum Leap. That's right, Eddie. He was in Quantum Leap, but he's the dude. He plays Ben in this movie. The guy singing in the light bulb, singing some Roy Orbison in his low-key brothel or whatever. Subtle hints like he's wearing a cast on his arm. That was his decision. That's just a small little thing to be like, Frank beat the shit out of him because he didn't sing the last time or some shit like that. I love movies that don't treat us like we're idiots, right, Joe? And Dean Stockwell, absolutely. He makes this movie soar in that moment. He really does. But my favorite performance, of course, is Dennis Hopper. Like, you fuck! Like, dude, I don't think nobody said fuck this much since fucking, what's his name? Al Pacino from Scarface, right? Like, This was insane. I think every line he says in this movie has a fuck in it, except for maybe 5. If we're being generous.
55 fucks.
55 fucks. Well, not as much as, of course, Al Pacino in Scarface, but if you look at the amount of lines, I think the ratio might be bigger. But that's just me. Style and structure. this movie oozes style, and it oozes the style of David Lynch. And he's working for the first time with cinematographer Frederick Elms, who's going to go on to do so many things, not just with David Lynch, but Ang Lee, Charlie Kaufman, and Jim Jarmusch, right? So this dude knows how to light. He knows how to make a scene look a certain way. And he learned a lot in this movie from David Lynch, from his own words. There was a moment where they had to like light a train station or some shit like that, or a factory wall. And he lit it. And David Lynch says, this is too bright. It would be darker. And in fact, we need to do this whole thing where you see factory things moving in the silhouette of the shadow. And they had to like make that all happen. David Lynch is such a brilliant filmmaker that he's able to bring these surreal, obscure qualities to the film visually that are striking and that have emotional impact, as much, if not more, emotional impact than the actual plot and the dialogue. And that blows me away. This movie looks brilliant. Look at the way it's juxtapositioning blue and red in the film. A few people have mentioned already at the beginning of the film, especially, where you see those like white picket fences and the red roses and the fire truck and all that shit. It's all so bright, so beautiful. But the rest of the film is what? Dark and blue with hints of red. And the red's like combating against the blue, right? So fucking amazing. And the movie initially was like 4 hours long, but he was contractually obligated to deliver a 2-hour cut so he could get final cut, right? This movie's perfect. I don't think anything needs to be added. If you can check out the deleted scenes, they give us more of like Frank's motivation, why he actually kidnapped Dorothy's son and husband and cut off his ear and all that kind of shit. None of that fucking matters. What matters is the vibe, the tone, and the feel of this film. And I'm right there with it, with a few other people. When I first watched this movie, I didn't get it, but I felt it. There have been other movies in my life that I didn't get, but I felt. And the more I went back to them and explored that feeling, the more I got those films. This is one of those. I think this movie is perfect with style and structure. What about you, Brooks? What do you think about the style and structure of this film?
Well, I think the style is like it's just vital to this movie, really. This movie is very dreamlike in a lot of ways, like I said, it feels kind of like it's in a mist almost, like, everything's foggy, not like literal in a literal sense, but like, it kind of feels like, you're not seeing everything, like, there's always something hidden. And I think it's better that they didn't, get into the motivations of Frank in this movie. So I think it fits better because like it's everything. I think like the mysterious kind of the mystique is kind of the point of the movie. Like, the fact that you don't know, like the whole thing, like it starts out, he sees his father as he's dying. And then all of a sudden he's just walking home and he just finds an ear laying on the ground. It's like, what a weird series of events. Like this movie its flow is both like natural and unnatural at the same time. It's very weird. It's kind of hard to pin down, but it's fascinating. I think it's one of the most fascinating aspects of this movie. It's just how bizarre it is and mundane at the same time. It's like it strikes this weird balance of being both like dreamlike and kind of like realistic. Like especially the scene where he first meets Frank and Frank's like, pressuring him to like take a ride. Cause that feels like I've had experiences with certain people would be like basically kind of force you to hang out with him for a while, even though, like, oh, I'm not going to have a good time. So I kind of felt like it was that with Frank, Frank's slightly more dangerous than most people I believe I've ever met in my time. Even the ones like I was most averse to hanging out with. So yeah, it is like, I feel like, it's artsy is what the first thing I thought. Like, this is a very artsy movie in a good way. Artsy doesn't necessarily mean good or bad. It just means that, like, it seems like it's very much a labor of love. Like, and like you mentioned Daniel Klaus earlier. Like, this movie does remind me a lot of Klaus's writing. Like, especially like Velvet Glove, Cast in Iron, and Monica even a little bit too.
Yeah, 100%. Good points. What about you, Verno? What do you think about the style and structure?
The first thing that sticks out, like structure wise, first off, this is one of the reasons why I'm really excited to watch it again, is because I wasn't like captivated by the movie until Dennis Hopper showed up. There was something about it. I'm sure when I watch it again, I'll enjoy like the first 40 minutes more. I'll be more into it. But I was like, at that point, all I'm doing is just soaking up the style and the look of the film. I mentioned like the awkwardness. It's hyper saturated, and then it's contrasted by, well, I guess like you mentioned, the nighttime scenes. It gets dark and then it gets super hyper, like the American dream. Like I said, the white picket fences and all that. But you mentioned one scene I wrote out in particular. You just mentioned it, that industrial scene with shadows. I was so taken aback, but I just loved that. I thought it was such a cool, like surreal scene that it's really showing you, like, yeah, there's just like a really nasty, dark vibe, but still keeping with like the beauty of it all, or the beauty of it all. Argento, I thought Italian stuff in general. It reminded me of Italian, like an Americanized version of that.
Mhm.
A lot of detail shots that remind me of Argento, but done in such a different way. Just like close-ups on objects that, like, I always think of Argento when I see that, but he'll usually do it with like a weapon. But these were like the police siren, just like that close-up detail shot of that. A lot of the opening scene when it goes into the detail of the earth and all like the mucky stuff going on under the surface was like such a cool fucking tone setter and like theme setter for the whole thing. But yeah, I don't know. I was blown away by it, by the style specifically. Oh, the story reminded me of a Giallo, where I guess like you go back to, like, I think Joe, you mentioned it's like from the beginning of cinema, where some normal dude comes across something extraordinary that he's swept up in this stuff. It's a big Hitchcock thing, but I always think of like Giallo, and then the way he finds the ear at the beginning, that's just like a New York Ripper, where old boy finds the hand at the beginning. That really reminded me of that. So it's a really Giallo setup, and the same thing where it's like, a lot of the Giallo, you never get the motivation of why this guy is doing it. Like, why is he obsessed with this crime? Like, he's not necessarily connected to it. It's not going to change his life one way or the other. I guess that kind of goes into some of the themes of the movie. But
yeah, maybe a part of the theme, right? Like, this is about a dude who's like, he's square, he's boring, he's trying to find something to push him over that edge, and he's got this like fascination with it. That's why any of us find a fucking ear in the fucking field, we just dip out, and it's an anecdote that we tell at fucking bar parties and shit, right? One time I found a fucking ear in the field.
I took a picture of it. Check it out.
I dropped it and left it fucking alone, man. I love when he takes it to the fucking cop and he goes, well, that's definitely a human ear. Like, no shit, dude. Like, but that's part of the humor. That's part of the humor of it, right? But like, it's because there's something more about that character. There's something more about Jeffrey, where he wants his life to be more exciting than it is.
He wants to believe.
And he falls down this rabbit hole from one ear into another. And think about that. Why is it an ear? You see the ear? They go into the ear and they come out of whose ear? His ear. Where's the ear go? To the brain. That's what David Lynch says. He says it could have been any body part with an orifice, but the ear made more sense because it goes directly into the brain. So that's why the ear is there. What about you, Joe? What do you think about the style and structure of this film?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to add too much more than what's already been said. Obviously, it's David Lynch being very David Lynch, very much the beta test for Twin Peaks in a lot of ways. Like, you see a lot of the sort of cinematography and stuff like that in Twin Peaks. The contrasting day and night, and the more innocent times during the day. Is very great in terms of just the way the whole movie is structured, and yeah, it's all really well paced out. Like it all just, and it has that just gradual build, but very early on, like finding an ear in a field is a really good hook for just like the beginning of the movie, and just everything builds and builds and builds in a way that I think is really good at keeping people engaged. Because like it escalates so fast between like, oh, human ear, we don't know if the guy's alive or dead. Oh, the apartment of someone who's maybe involved, and it's like, let's break into her apartment. Like just stuff where you're like, whoa, this is like really getting out of hand very fast. So I think and it all just, I know it all builds up and I think just works really well. It's not the kind of movie that you could really cut anything further. It all fits. It all feels right. There's no real like lag. It all just incrementally increases. The tension and the stakes continue to rise. Like it's almost like textbook. Like this is just how you're supposed to tell a story. And it's hard to do better than that, I think.
Yeah. Part of the major tonal influence on this movie to me is the music. Now, the music is done by Angelo Badalamenti, who we know as the composer of every David Lynch film pretty much from this point forward, as well as Twin Peaks. And David Lynch plays with music as well. There's like a documentary on here where part of the documentary is them showing David Lynch on an organ just making these weird tones. Right? So the music is great because Brooks, you've seen Twin Peaks, right?
No.
I'm very disappointed. Verno, you haven't seen it, right?
No.
God damn it. All right. But Joe, you have.
Yeah.
You have those tones. That gets juxtapositioned with that like cool, chill, bohemian, jazzy, snappy thing. That's in this movie. And that's all Angelo, right? His vibe becomes part of what Lynch's vibe is as well. But the entire movie, and I love the music in this movie, but the entire vibe of this movie actually came from Blue Velvet, right? The original, like, 50s recording from, what's his fucking name? Some dude. And Dino actually was like, that song's going to be too expensive, so can we recreate it? So they got Angelo to recreate the song, and they were going to bring in the original singer to do it, but he was like 20 years older, so he was like two ranges down. It just wasn't working. They got Dino finally to agree to buy the fucking song, right? But that song gave David Lynch this idea for this film. He said that song felt so innocent and longing. And he's like, when I was thinking of this song, it kept hitting in my head. What if I'm hiding in a woman's closet, trying to peek into a deeper mystery of who she is, who I am, and life? And Blue Velvet, it makes sense because he says Blue Velvet is a song. It's Americana, but it's also a texture and a feel and a look. And that's what the movie's supposed to be. But then, even more than Blue Velvet, how about Roy Orbison's, what is it, In Dreams? Is that the name of the song? In Dreams?
Yeah.
Our buddy Dean doing that damn song with the I see. Oh my God. It's so freaking good. The music in this film is so meticulously, perfectly picked, whether it's bought music or whether it's music made for the film. I think it's genius musically. What about you, Brooks? What do you think?
Yeah, I like the soundtrack to this movie as well. Like it had those, the kind of nightclub song moments, but it also had like he also used those deep bass tones, like the boom, like to build up the moments of dread. Like I think the music is done really good in this movie. Like it's placed perfectly so it doesn't like jump out at you too much, but it doesn't fade into the background either. Like you hear it and it's there, but it's not like it's part of the scene rather than being like than clashing with it, I guess, which I guess is like the point of a soundtrack. So I mean, mission accomplished, I suppose.
Yeah. And the other thing is like sound design comes to be a big part of this discussion as well, right? The sound design is amazing, dude. Like there's a sound designer in this film. I can't remember his name, but all those moments where you just hear you feel like a demonic influence on mundane affairs. Well, guess where that gets done to the nth degree? Twin Peaks. Right? That like that show does the exact same thing. So David Lynch started as a painter. Painting somehow led him to film, right? But he also has this like audible sense to him, right? The visuals, the audio, and it goes all the way down to the sound design, man. The sound design. First time I ever noticed sound design in my life was watching Blade on DVD for the first time at my friend's house, who had this amazing, at the time, state-of-the-art sound design. And I realized in all of Blade, there's a kind of sound. And then in that moment when Whistler shows up and goes, "Catch you fuckers at a bad time," it just drops. And I was like, oh, there's more that we're never picking up consciously in the theater, watching it on home video. That is so prevalent here in Blue Velvet, especially now with our elaborate sound systems that we have. The sound design in this movie is amazing. Verno, what do you think about the music, the score, the sound design?
I mean, we talk a lot. There's sometimes I watch a movie and then at the end of it, I'm like, fuck, I forgot to listen. I forgot to hear the music. But no, this one, like right away, it's just so prevalent. It stands out so much. You can tell right away he knows what he's doing. He knows how to use sound. You already said a lot of the points that I would have made. Just to repeat, the Blue Velvet. I fucking love that song. I've been singing it all week long. All week long. It's so good. It stands out so much. It's such a tone setter. I'm glad that you mentioned that it's the same guy there's something about it, not the quality of the music. There's something about the playful jazz that you get that kind of like tells you, oh, there's a mystery going on, but let's not take it too serious. You know what I mean? There's something about that felt TV to me. Yeah,
that kind of
something
shit, right?
like this feels like something that would be on TV, but like maybe better quality than what you would get in most TV shows. So I thought that was great. It was so damn good. There's something about, again, to bring up Italian giallo, there's always something in Italian that feels out of place, but it works. And it's not in the way that it's like Scorsese juxtaposing things where there's violence on screen with happy music. It's not that. There's just something about it that's just fucking weird. And I don't know. It's like this is an odd choice to evoke the emotion that they're going for. But I can't put my finger on it, but it works and it's weird. But it was fire music throughout.
Some of the biggest Twin Peaks moments for me. You see the candle, right, Joe? Joe, you know what I'm talking about. You see the candle and the flame flickering, and you got that like, whoa, that sound. To me, I call it the sound of the forest and the owls because of Twin Peaks. You know, it's like that sound of a demonic presence, right? There's something evil, a shadowy force underlying everything beautiful that's going on in life and nature. And I think the sound design and the music does that so freaking well. What about you, Joe? What do you think about the music, sound design, soundtrack, all that stuff?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's really hard to add too much else to that. It's all great. All the song choices, everything enhances the movie. It all plays hand in hand. There's no unintentionally jarring moments in it. You know, it's expertly done. I guess I'll also add Roy Orbison at first hated this movie when he first saw it, and had to sort of be explained a bit about the movie, and upon rewatches, came around to the movie, and
But he
like
still loves
him
Pretty
and
Woman more, I'm sure.
yeah,
Right?
oh sure, but like he also he got to like meet David Lynch, and they actually like meditated together and stuff like that. Like they got to have these sort of interactions, and it's like, oh man, that sounds great. Like I love David Lynch and Roy Orbison. So what a great team up there.
Hell yeah. Y'all, the music and the sound design, everything, this is proto Twin Peaks, is what it is. Brooks, Verno, if you've learned anything tonight, watch Twin Peaks. Like, I'm serious as shit. It's one of my... Verno, you know that Lost and Buffy are two of my favorite shows. My top 3 includes Twin Peaks.
Hell yeah.
Like, those are my 3 favorite shows, man. Like, and Twin Peaks is amazing, and the music is a big part of that. But this movie has a lot of layers of meaning and themes. What are you picking up on, Brooks? What's this movie speaking to you? As surreal as it may be. And Dennis Hopper says he believes this is truly the first American surrealist film. And I would agree with that 100%. The Coen brothers don't exist without David Lynch's Blue Velvet, in my opinion. So what are you picking up as far as theme goes, Brooks?
Well, I think like a big theme of this movie is, this idea of, we live in a world of, our civilization is built upon like rules and like, values and all these kind of things. But there's like another world, like within the same space that is bereft of all that, the world in the shadows, the place where, all of a sudden you walk into this dark place and like everything's different and none of the rules apply. And like, no, you can't understand, why people are doing anything. And like, I think that's what, like, the idea is that this kid, he is like, very like typical kind of American kid. And like, all of a sudden he like gets into this world of people who like, who are so different from what he's used to that he could never understand. Like, like which Dennis Hopper's character was made to not be understood. Like he is very much a character who is just seems to be like just ruled by his most base impulses and like has absolutely like no sense of morality or decency within him. He just does whatever he wants to make himself feel better. And when you've been raised in like, have known nothing but a world that has these kind of rules and values, like that's very scary. Like this idea of like, there are people out there who don't give a shit about any of that. And if you like run into them in the dark, like you could like disappear, like sometimes like if you walk too deep into the shadows, like, sometimes you never come back. And, it's this idea of like, that's like a very thing about psychological horror is this fear of, just wandering into the wrong place and entering a world where, nothing that is real anymore, like the reality kind of just disappears. Like you're still in reality, but it's not the same reality, That's why this movie feels so dark, I think, and kind of heavy in a lot of ways.
Absolutely. What about you, Verno? What's this movie speaking to you?
Well, I thought that was quite well said by Brooks. That's definitely there's things that I said I learned after my viewing that I'll let you guys get into because I'd be lying if I said this is what it spoke to me. But that's the stuff dealing more with like the shadow. But one line that really stuck out to me, and we've kind of touched on, is him saying the line was something like, I wrote down in my notes, I want to believe. I don't remember what the line was. It was him being involved in a mystery, his excitement to be involved in a mystery. And it's like not just a mystery, but like him living in this small town, living this boring life. There's something dark happening that he's being able to kind of dig. And that's kind of him playing with his shadow, I suppose. But like just like the whole I want to believe and I'm excited. I remember this kind of fucked up to say, but I remember being in junior high and being in a small town and like somebody that we knew in school, their parent died, right? And it's obviously it's a bad thing, but there was this excitement that was brewing in the children about it. That was like under the surface. Nobody's like, oh, I'm excited that this person died. But there's something like it's exciting when you're bored, like darkness is exciting when you don't experience a lot of dark. I've always thought about that. Like, look at these fuckers. They're like kind of excited about this. And that's kind of what I took from it, is that idea of like mundane life and the shadow being exciting.
Okay. Yeah, no, word. I get that. What about you, Joe? What are you thinking?
So it's a story about this like strength and horrors of love, because both Jeffrey and Frank are driven by love. Frank's idea of love is warped through his clearly like abusive upbringing. Like clearly he had issues with his parents. There was something going on with his mom and his dad. Like you can pretty easily read into it being like maybe he had like an Oedipus complex and was in love with his mom and resented his dad for it. Maybe his dad abused him as a kid. There's, there's the whole mommy bit. There's the, putting on the lipstick. There's, the abuse, don't look at me, all of the hitting and how that was like his way of expressing love. Because despite everything he does, and this is part of why Dennis Hopper is so good in this movie, you still believe like he genuinely loves Dorothy. Like he's a monster, he's awful, but like he very genuinely is like, this is the woman I want to be with. This isn't like a power thing beyond that. He wants her. And Jeffrey's kind of having this parallel sort of journey, because I mean, Laura Dern, like she had a boyfriend. He like very like casually is breaking that apart. So, and doesn't seem remorseful about it. So it's like the opposite end of the same coin with Jeffrey and Frank, because that is how Frank also goes through, but Frank is destroying people's lives like through violence, whereas like his version of love, and love is tearing those people apart. And the opposite end is Jeffrey tearing people apart through love, but it's a love that's it's not coming from a violent place. It's coming from a more like caring and endearing place. But even in those instances, he's still causing problems. Like he's potentially going to, it doesn't work out this way, but like they're very open about the fact that he might end up ruining her relationship with her father, and they're still going through with all of this. Like it's a very interesting look at how love handled in two very different ways is powerful and destructive no matter what. So
all right, I like that. You're right. Frank is feeling love, but he doesn't know how to explore or accept that, right? And that's something that we see in Rosalini's character, where all they know is like abuse as a part of love, right?
Yeah.
And that's something that's prevalent even when Jeffrey first shows up and she's basically about to rape him, right? Because That's what's been done to her over and over and over again, right? This movie to me is very powerful. I think this movie is about the darkness underneath the light and how necessary that is, right? And it's okay. First of all, David Lynch has to have been a big fan of Carl Jung, right? Has to have been, right?
Yeah.
And that's where the shadow idea comes from. And the idea of dreams. And David Lynch is super into dreams. This movie, just like Twin Peaks and other movies of his, very dreamlike, right? So it's about what is underneath the actual. And I guess the way I want to put this is this. Whether it's love or darkness, one is always underneath the other, right? We can only truly love when we understand the darkness innate in us and other people. Once you've been fucking betrayed by so many people, you can start picking up what love means. Because love is like a flip side of that darkness of betrayal, right? And at the same time, sometimes you only feel love when you're going into the dark aspect of your soul. That's what Frank's doing. That's what Jeffrey's doing. Jeffrey is the proto Frank. We talk about how this movie is the proto Twin Peaks. Jeffrey is the proto Frank. These are the type of things. And here's the thing. I think Frank had a more fucked up childhood than Jeffrey did. But Jeffrey, who had a good, solid childhood, who never got to explore his shadow, right? When Rosalina's character, Dorothy, hit me, he does. But he does that without understanding why, right? He finds this rabbit hole, right? He goes down this journey because he's attracted to the darkness that he never had in his life, right?
Yeah.
Let's juxtaposition that with Frank, who's attracted to the light because he's never had that in his life. He only knows the dark way to deal with it, right?
Mm.
So to me, the whole point is this. Everything that's good, everything that's golden, everything that glitters has a dark sheen underneath it, right? That's why the very beginning of the movie, you see the white picket fence, the beautiful flowers, the green grass, and then what do you see? You see the guy out there, happy as hell, waving at everybody, has a heart attack, dies alone. Then we cut to what? Underneath that beautiful grass, the insects eating everything. Then we got that really cheesy bit where Laura Dern's talking about the Robin and her visions of darkness and all this shit, right? But the insects are beneath the facade of the beautiful lawn. What makes that lawn beautiful? The gross insects in the dark beneath it, eating and shitting, right? And at the end of the movie, after her vision, the Robin comes and swoops up the insect and eats the cockroach. But it's more than just light overcoming dark, because that's what this movie's about, light and dark. But it's not about light overcoming dark or dark overcoming light. It's about light needs dark, dark needs light. That Robin is only able to save the day at the end of the film thematically by ingesting the darkness themselves. David Lynch was a student, I am sure, of Carl Jung and the Red Book and the dream theory and the unconscious collective, like all that shit, like the unconscious, like all that shit is prevalent in every piece of work I see from David Lynch. And to me, overall, I will just say this. Light doesn't exist without darkness. We got to understand the dark sides of ourselves to appreciate the beauty and the good parts of ourselves, if that makes sense. And if we don't, we're like Jeffrey in this movie, diving down rabbit holes we should not go into, right? So that's what I think it's about. I think it's about light versus dark, but how none exists without the other. I think this is a very magical film. So you out there in the chat, out of 5 possible you digs, what do you give Blue Velvet? Brooks, kick us off here on the panel.
Well, I had to think about it like a lot, but I think this movie is deserving of a 5. Like, if for nothing else, like it intrigues me. Like I'm like, despite, how the dark and kind of heavy nature of it, I feel like, something draws me into it, like actually want to like, know more about it. Like, I feel like this is a movie, like I couldn't like rewatch it like immediately after, but I feel like I could rewatch it later on down the line and, and like really enjoy it even more. So yeah, I think like it's just very, like it is what it's meant to be is what I think. Is like, it feels like what it's meant to be. It feels like it's very intentional thing. He made it this way, and this was how it was meant to be. And it's interesting. Like I love it. Need to watch a few more Lynch movies. I think need to start digging into his catalog a little bit.
Well, I would definitely recommend Twin Peaks. Outside of this movie, I would really recommend. Man, it's hard. Wild at Heart's a good one to follow this one up with, I think. But yeah, I think so. But David Lynch is a master filmmaker, and that's a really great way to put it, Brooks. I'm glad you gave it a perfect score. What about you, Blood Splatter Chatter? What the fuck you think?
I'm so aggressive. You ready for a 0.25 or something?
For some bullshit like that. Yeah, I am.
I'll give it a 4.5. I'd be lying if I said I fucking loved it, but I was so part of it. It was just like you were talking about earlier about Roger Ebert. It's like, yes, it did make me feel things. It made me feel uncomfortable, and it was like a fucking like a tough watch for large chunks of it. But that was the word you said, Brooks, like intentional. Like everything was so intentional, and that's one thing I like really, really appreciate about the movie. Just like even like I love a scene like this, like when they're at the diner, and you've got the two characters sitting there at the diner, and it's looking at it this way, and each of their straws are pointing like with intent. They weren't just thrown in the fucking cup; they were sitting there the way that they were supposed to be to make the picture work. And it's not just like visually that; it's all the ideas in the movie are there with intent, or at least they feel like it to me for someone that's just seen it the one time. But yeah, I wasn't floored by it, but at the same time I was. So I don't really know how to explain how I felt about my first David Lynch film, but I'll give it a 4.5.
That's pretty fucking good, I think. What about you, Joe?
Yeah, no, it has to be a 5. It's kind of crazy though, because I feel like for a lot of directors, this would be their best movie. And I'm giving this a 5, and I do think it's an incredible movie. And I'm not even sure if it's his best movie. Like I could my favorite's still probably Eraserhead, but it's the one I've seen the most. It's the one I saw at the youngest.
Where would you tell me to go after this? Like, what's the next step after this? From Joe Corello to me,
watching Blue Velvet again.
Yeah, no, you're probably right on that. You're right.
But I mean, like, honestly, I kind of feel like to win you over at this point, it might be The Elephant Man. Like, you might just need to really see that. Like, it is a genuinely, it's produced by Mel Brooks. It's genuinely a great movie. It's still very David Lynch, but it's toned down a bit, like not toned down. It's like reined in, is probably the best way to put it. But it's just a fantastic, heartfelt movie that like you will feel things watching. And Anthony Hopkins' performance is fucking like John Hurt too, but like the two of them are so fucking good in this. And then I like you were kind of saying like Wild at Heart maybe after Blue Velvet, but yeah, Elephant Man might be the next thing you like need to see to get you. Sort of in
Elephant
that
Man,
mindset.
Wild at Heart,
Actually-
and Twin Peaks, I would say.
I actually read the Elephant Man book, and so like I was always interested in seeing the movie, but I never watched the movie. It's one I mean to watch.
Yeah, no, it's really good.
I think
And
I feel like I heard.
Eraserhead, I would also put up.
I've seen a bit of Eraserhead.
Yeah, I would too.
I was actually embarrassed to say, well, I've watched a half hour of that some years ago and didn't finish it. I heard somewhere that Lost Highway would be like the most horror one. Was that a good description or
Lost
no?
Highway though is it's not quite Inland Empire, but it takes a while to really understand that film, I think.
Okay.
And I'm not trying to be that guy.
Right. Be it.
Right? But like I think his movies are not easy to grasp for a lot of people. But you will grasp them, Verno.
Thank you for that.
Yeah,
Lost Highway's got a great soundtrack. I'll tell you that.
I do love Lost Highway. Lost Highway should be after Eraserhead, Elephant Man, and Wild at Heart, like for sure. I would watch
that. I do.
Yeah.
I mean, what I would probably do is go Eraserhead because I do like to get the feel of someone's career, the trajectory.
Well, the movie you need to start with is Dune, and then it's all up from there.
That's what I did.
And David Lynch almost did Return of the Jedi, so
that would have been interesting.
I would have. That would have been fucking incredible. But
or it would have been really bad. All right. So I will agree with most of the panel and give it a 5. I think it's a damn near perfect film. I don't think it's quite as perfect as Back to the Future as far as a film commercially that everybody can get into and vibe with. But I think it's a damn near perfect film as an artistic vision and a voice of a director coming through very early on in his career. We were talking about Thief by Michael Mann. Everything that was Michael Mann is prevalent in that movie. Everything that is David Lynch is prevalent here. Yep. You know what I'm saying? And even things like Elephant Man and Eraserhead and Dune, this is David Lynch to me. It's to me, if you want to know who David Lynch is and why I love him, watch Blue Velvet, watch Twin Peaks, and watch them multiple times. And you'll get into the vibe. But Wild at Heart is a great one to follow this one up with, I think. But I personally think the best follow-up to Blue Velvet after another rewatch of Blue Velvet is Twin Peaks.
Yeah, I really want to watch that. It's on Paramount Plus, which I have. So yeah, I want to check it out.
I have it all on Blu-ray, so I don't care about that. But yeah, I'm just kidding. So a 5 from me and Joe and even Brooks, and a 4.5 from you, Verno?
Mm-hmm.
All right, that's a PCP average of 4.869. That's not too bad. I think that's good. Very solid rating for Blue Velvet. Go check out more David Lynch films, and maybe we'll check out more David Lynch films as we move along here on PCP Movie Night, right? Thus concludes our review of Blue Velvet. But next week, we got another first-time director talked about here on the channel. Another one of my favorites that we haven't talked about yet, Steven Soderbergh. And we're talking about The Limey. The Limey is available right now to stream on Amazon Prime. So if you're like most people and have Amazon Prime, you can check out this movie. Terrence Stamp, Peter Fonda, Steven Soderbergh. Steven Soderbergh, if you didn't know, was the guy who did Sex, Lies, and Videotape, Out of Sight, which is a great film. What else did he do? Ocean's 11, the remake. Most people remember that one. The Limey is amazing. I cannot wait for that show. Brooks, what about you? What you got coming up? Final thoughts.
Yeah, me and Jelena, of course, we do Go Figure reviews, and we didn't do a video this week, but I believe what he plans to do this coming week is something Secret Wars Marvel Legends. So we'll see. But I guess for my parting line, I would say, am I a detective or a pervert? That's for me to know, you to find out.
Hell yeah. Speaking of perverts, what about you, Verno? What are your
Hey,
final thoughts? What you got coming up?
finally nailed that transition. On Thursday on the main show, Blood Splatter Chatter, we are talking My Bloody Valentine. How appropriate! Very
Nice.
excited for that. Stoked for it. Actually, just bought the 4K. Haven't checked that version out.
Great flick.
And then on the following Tuesday, which I think you have a thumbnail for, we're kicking off a show. Me and my buddy Stu on next Tuesday, 8 o'clock Central Time, live. My return to comic books. Gonna be talking some horror comics on a new show with Stu from Dr. Doom's fan club titled Panels of the Damned. And we're gonna be covering 30 Days of Night, the graphic novel, and then the 6-issue follow-up to that, 30 Days of Night, Dark Days. So be there, be square. And then Sunday, don't have the thumbnail yet, but I'll be with Robbie. Here's the plan. Robbie, Fable, and Eric from 9 Panel Grid. We're going through each and every episode of Masters of Horror. Once every like 6 weeks or so, we're doing 2 at a time. We're on episodes 3 and 4. We're going to redo 4, one of the Argento episodes, Jennifer. So stoked for that. We decided like we had to show Fable and E. They had to see Jennifer. So we're going to cover it again. Robbie and I, we've already done it once.
What's the other one? What's the other film?
It's the Toby Hooper one, the Day of the Dead, Walk of the Dead,
Dance of the Dead?
Dance of the Dead, yeah.
Yeah.
Episode 3.
All right. That's still going to be fun.
Yeah.
Just to watch Jennifer again, that's still going to be fun. Just to hear Fable be like, this movie was a piece of shit. I didn't like it.
I'm curious. I can't wait, man. I
Always
can't wait
great.
to hear E's reaction to Jennifer, even more
Oh,
so.
yeah. No shit, man. Me and you're going to be very staunchly defending Jennifer by Dario Argento. I'm going to let you know that, right? We're going to be like, they're going to be like, this would get, what is this horrendous shit? We're going to be like, no, it's purposeful. It's supposed to be that way.
Hydra Asylum Comics. Jennifer, the definition of what that mouth do. What that mouth do. You got it.
All right. Always a good time over at Blood Splatter Chatter. Always a good time with Joe Corallo, too. What you got coming up, my man?
Well, first I wanted to mention that I just saw the new Steven Soderbergh movie, Presence, on the big screen yesterday.
Yeah.
That was...
Was it good? It looks good to me, man.
I really like it. I'd be interested to hear other people's takes. Like it's a very small movie, you know, like it's a small cast. It's set in a pretty there's not a ton of locations or anything like that. Like it's really like a close, intimate movie.
Isn't it kind of like told from the ghost perspective? Isn't that kind of like the shtick? It's got very mixed reviews. Is that the one I'm thinking of?
Yeah, no, that's what it is. Okay. And like, it's one of those movies I don't know if it has much rewatchability, because once you go through it, once you know all the twists and everything, you're kind of like, I don't know if it's, you know, it's... So yeah, like I really liked it. I'm glad I watched it on the big screen. I had a lot of fun. It was really, it was a really good movie. I don't know if I ever want to watch it again.
Cool.
That's how I felt about Bubble.
But yeah. but while that's going on, you can help support me go to all of these movies on the big screen by pre-ordering King Arthur and the Knights of Justice Volume 2. You didn't read the first volume, you say? Well, you're in luck. You can order the first volume and get it right away from the Maverick website, or, you know, ask your comic shop. And also, as long as Free Comic Book Day still happens, I have the King Arthur and the Knights of Justice, Princess Guinevere and the Jewel Riders crossover Free Comic Book Day book. You can read me and Jordi Belair having co-written something. It's kind of wild. I'd check it out.
All right. All right. Also, recently you had the second issue of Green Hornet Miss Fury come out, right?
Yeah, I'm editing that. That came out last week, right?
To some shops.
So you might have it might not have gotten it yet, so you can get it this week. So go for it.
Oh yeah. Y'all go buy a Joe Corallo comic book, and when you do, think you're supporting PCP and Joe Corallo, who is part of the Excitable PCP crew. So there you go. All right. For my final thoughts, how about this? Join us next week for the Limey. Y'all, you know I love my filmmakers. First David Lynch film we talk about was Blue Velvet. Why? Because I think it's one of his best. Why are we talking about the Limey for the first Steven Soderbergh film? Because I think it might be one of his best. So I'm very excited for that. It's on Amazon Prime. I will not be there for My Bloody Valentine, but that movie is great. Check it out. I won't be there for 30 Days a Night. I think that comic book sucks. Fuck Ben Templesmith. I don't like that guy. Had an awkward interaction with him last year at MegaCon, and I'm over it. This is the year of PCPX. Ben Templesmith, I got 2 words for you. Suck it! You suck my fucking dirty ass balls after they've been sweating all night in the middle of a fucking tractor pull. So there you go. Outside of that,
Rockin' Robbie with the steel chair.
that's what I'm trying to do. I'll be on Dylan's Horror Show on Sunday night to talk about the case of the Bloody Iris, which I'm very excited for that. Before that, I'll be over at Blood Splatter Chatter for the Masters of Horror episode. We're talking about Dario Argento's Jennifer. You tell me I don't want to see Jennifer's assets again? 100%. Talking about a butterface. Anyway, moving on beyond that, Rockin' Robbie Live on Sunday. Okay, so I'll be doing the Verno show, and then I'll be doing the Dylan show for the case of the Bloody Iris. But in between that, Rockin' Robbie Live, and we're revealing the lineup for PCP March Madness 2025. We'll also be revealing the lineup for some other channels, including Dylan, including Verno. 4 channels involved in March Madness this year. I cannot wait for that. Very, very excited. And thank you, Mike, so much for the beautiful, beautiful banner there. So yeah, as far as my final thoughts for the movie, shit. How about this? Let's fuck! I'll fuck anything that moves! And by the way, did y'all just realize that Jay saying I'll fuck anything that moves in the Kevin Smith movies is a reference to this? That open that up? Boom.
Yeah.
Yeah, it did. That's where it came from. I'll fuck anything that moves.